All right, folks. So welcome. This is our November edition of Tunnel Talk. It's been a few months since I've hosted one of these, so fingers crossed for smooth sailing. Yeah, let's do this. So today we're going to be talking about on-farm adoption of heating and cooling technologies. I think this is a really, really cool topic. I've seen some really cool stuff happening across Nova Scotia, and I think who better to share and talk about the different stuff that's available than you guys. So this will kind of just be a cross section of a few topics. If you guys find that there is anything you want to learn more about or you'd like to see featured in a webinar or some other form of extension, feel free to reach out to me and we'll see if we can get that set up. I will say, just as a bit of a precursor, which I think actually works really well for our upcoming events, is going to be our December session for the Tunnel Talk webinar. We were fortunate enough to take a group of growers to Quebec back early September, and I was really hoping that one of the farmers from the farm there was going to actually be able to pop on and talk about heat pump technology. This is something that they have put into one of their propagation houses, I believe this year, and they're really looking at expanding that. Unfortunately, he wasn't available today, but he will be jumping in on December 15th. Really haven't seen a lot of heat pump technology happening on farm, so yeah, I really recommend we check that out. So in addition to that, we're also going to be looking at a couple other events coming up through December. December 1st, we're going to be doing our pesticide priority setting. So this is a great opportunity to bring forward basically your pest disease and herbicide woes. We're going to be doing this in person at our Kentville office. If you're unable to make it, you can also contact myself and just kind of let me know what those headaches are. So really at this session, we're looking at what are some of the issues that we don't have the appropriate interventions for. So one example could be something like thrips. If we're finding that I just don't have the sprays to manage thrips in my crop, definitely mention that to me and I will bring that forward, and then that will be brought to the national meeting in March. In additional Tunnel Talk news, so December 15th, I'm still kind of working on the full theme for that particular session. We're kind of just piecing it together at this point, but I will kind of send out an email once I make a final decision. It's either going to be looking at new innovation on farm this year, otherwise we'll be looking at just a quick review of some of the things that we did see in Quebec on the tour. I'm hoping in either case that Andre is able to join us and talk a bit about the heat pump, and then I think that kind of slots into both session topics well, regardless of what we focus on. January 12th, we're going to have a guest speaker, Vern Grubinger from Vermont. I think this is going to be also really interesting. So we have sort of our classic soil test that we use here in Nova Scotia. It's quite common in the US to use a saturated media extract to kind of look at that nutrient breakdown and that nutrient assessment of our growing media. But they would use it in soil. So to me, a saturated media extract is something we would use in substrate, but it's quite common to use it in the US for soil. So Vern is going to join us January 12th and kind of talk about using the two different type of tests in a traditional soil and sort of how we can combine that information to make our fertility plans. So that should be kind of cool. Not Nova Scotia specific, but New Brunswick will be hosting their Horticulture Congress December 2nd and 3rd in Fredericton, New Brunswick. That looks like there's a great lineup in case you're able to catch that. And finally, we have our nitrogen management workshops focusing on amendments. So we have 4 locations coming up. We're going up north, Amherst, and then we have Middleton, Antigonish, and Stewiacke. We're going to be really like looking at our compost, our manures, our meals. How do we interpret basically the report that gets pumped out at the provincial lab here? And then how do we take those numbers and turn that into, how much do I actually need to apply for my particular crop? When am I applying it? That sort of thing. So we're going to have a bit of a discussion. There's going to be calculations. There's going to be a really short presentation. Yeah, so we're gonna do a lot of fun stuff. So I definitely recommend you guys register for that if you are around. All right, so we've got three people who are going to be speaking today. Um, Basically just talking about the heating and cooling technology they have on their farms. We have Tim Halliday from Driftwood Greenhouses out in Digby Neck. We have Cami Waldegrave from Pictou area, and then we have Matthew Roy from Coastal Grove Farm coming from all the way down in Southwest Nova. So I thought each grower can kind of give a bit of a summary of what they do, kind of talk about their innovation. We can open it up for discussion after that, and then kind of switch to the next person. Go ahead there,
So
Cami.
I can do a little overview. My name is Cami Harbottle. I have a certified organic market garden in Tadmorish, now called Waldegrave, Nova Scotia, and the North Shore. And I guess 4 years ago, I had to replace. I had a different seedling greenhouse. I have only one heated greenhouse. I have unheated high tunnels. I had a seeding greenhouse that was heated by oil previously, and I had to replace the oil tank and didn't want to put any more pennies into burning fossil fuels. So I started looking into their options and really found there weren't very many options for my scale of growing. Most everyone was using propane or oil. Um, so I decided to do a bit of an experiment. There was some funding available through an Advancing Innovative Technologies program, and then there was also subsequently a little bit through the green investment, whatever it was called, Green Technologies Fund. So I ended up building what is very similar to a Chinese style greenhouse, where there's a solid north wall, insulated north wall, and the greenhouse area is all in the south of the structure. Okay, you can switch. So my goals were basically, I thought if I'm going to invest in this, I want to have something that has zero emissions. I want it to be structurally resilient with more hurricanes coming, etc. I wanted low maintenance and I wanted to have zero operating costs. I didn't want to have to pay for the heating on an ongoing basis. So I already had the solar panels installed, as you could see in the previous picture, on the shed behind the greenhouse. So that was kind of one asset that was already there. Okay, you can carry on forward. And the technology that I chose to go with was using the solar system. And then I put in a Sandin Sanko 2 heat pump. So that when I put that in, they were just coming into Canada. There was only a couple installed on the West Coast and they were used in houses. So I actually ended up voiding the warranty to put it into this purpose, to use it for this purpose. But now they have actually come around to using them for space heating as well. So the benefit of this I guess the third piece of the technology is then I also realized I needed a power backup for power outages with both the cooling system for the walk-in cooler and also the heating system for the greenhouse. So I put in at that time, the only battery system that was available was a Tesla Powerwall. And they put a gateway in, which is put between the solar system and the battery. So it allows the power to flow back and forth into the grid. But as soon as the power goes out on the grid, the whole system runs just on the battery. Okay, so you could go to the next slide. So the benefits of the Sanko 2 heat pump and the reasons I chose it, it's an air-to-water heat pump, not an air-to-air heat pump. There's no way I could have heated that space with an air-to-air heat pump. So it is, and it's got a COP, so like an efficiency factor 5 times that of an electric boiler and 5 times that of a typical air-to-air heat pump. So it's super efficient. It doesn't use any refrigerants. It uses CO2 as its refrigerant, basically. So I was able to install it just with a plumber. So this is kind of the installation of the whole system. The heat pump's on the outside. There's a super insulated water tank that comes with the heat pump. And then that is just the plumbing. I put it into different zones in the greenhouse and a circulating pump. So it's fairly simple technology. You can flip. Yeah, pros, it's high efficiency, COP of 5.5, no chemical refrigerants, zero greenhouse gas emissions. There's zero operating costs for the heating. So for me, the heat pump is actually run entirely off the solar panels. There's no additional cost. It's very easy hookup. I went through the process with Efficiency Nova Scotia, so now the heat pumps are approved for rebates. So I was able to get a significant rebate back from Efficiency Nova Scotia. The whole system is, resilient in terms of power outages. So I also needed the power backup in order to keep the greenhouse inflated so that it has some structural resilience. It could be even more beneficial because now that the battery is there, it could back up our home. The only problem is our home is on the other side of the road, so we actually can't use it to back up our home. But if your farm was more efficiently set up, you could use it to back up your home. And now there's actually an additional thing that could be beneficial there's a Nova Scotia Power battery storage pilot program where you can actually get subsidized to put in battery storage, and they will you can create power when there's sunshine, and then you can sell it back to Nova Scotia Power in times of higher demand. So it could be a lot more. I missed that program, but it's available right now. They're just starting a pilot program, so that would be available to any new projects. So you can see in here, I took the air to water, and I decided rather than trying to heat this whole space because of the design, it ended up being a 16-foot high greenhouse, which I didn't want to heat all that airspace. So I decided to go back to kind of root zone heating and hauled up some old research papers and found kind of all the specs on temperature, water temperature, and spacing of the piping in order to keep the plants warm. So I just plumbed it with PEX, built some tables, and put it into zones so I could control the temperature for different types of plants. Okay. That's just another picture of once it was done. So the main con is that, well, I guess the early season, so March, some really cold nights. If I have hot like crops like peppers and tomatoes in there, I will sometimes put an extra space heater for a few hours overnight. Just can put it on a temperature controller in case it gets a bit too cool for the plant part. But the soil stays warm with the root zone heating. So that's the main thing. I occasionally add supplemental heat in there on a cold night. I guess the other con is the cost of installation. So this is kind of what the greenhouse looks like. It's not, so the middle zone is then used for more, like more of the hot crops, peppers, tomatoes that I don't want to dip down at all. And then there's benches along the south side. And then there's a space which I haven't finished yet, but along the north side, you'll see the wall in a second. I don't have a more recent photo, but there's the last stage, which hasn't been done, is an in-ground bed and then a removable bench above it to give a little bit more space. If you want to go to the next slide, I'll just explain the three. Okay, so that's just a plant. So this is it. Yeah, no, to the wall. Yep. So this is the north wall. The north wall of the greenhouse is kind of an additional step in the heating plant design. So it's designed as a thermal mass. It's an insulated wall, 6 inches of cellulose insulation, and then we covered it with burlap and strapped it, and then we dug out our pond and used the clay mixed with straw. So we created a straw clay plaster. And there's about 5 to 6 inches of the straw clay plaster. So it starts with a fairly coarse plaster, and then you work your way out with layers of finer plaster, and then you mix in a lime coating for the end. So that acts as a thermal mass. It heats up quite a lot during the day, and then it releases the heat overnight just to keep the ambient air temperature higher. And so, but beneath the thermal mass wall, there will be an in-ground bed. And as the water comes in, the hot water comes in at 143 degrees, and it goes, there's a mixing valve so you can control the temperature. It goes through all the zones of the um, tables, and then the system actually works more efficiently if the water is very cold going back into the tank. And so the idea of the is to put the last step, the return line, run it through an in-ground bed to just dump out any extra heat, and then put the cold water back into the base of the tank. It's stratified, and is supposed to make the whole system more efficient. And then yeah, and then I have that whole wall space to grow up. Is the plan. Um, yeah, in terms of project costs, the solar was existing from 2010, so it's actually pretty much paid off now. So it's the gateway power wall plus installation was 21,000. The Sanko 2 heat pump was 9,000 with a plus or minus a $2,900 efficiency Nova Scotia rebate. Plumbing and installation, like all the of the heat pump was about 2,500. The PEX and connectors was 250. At that time, the Harnois Ovaltech portion of it that I purchased, which is actually kind of tricky to buy only parts, but was 15,000, and then the building of the shed was 45,000, and the construction of the greenhouse and the slab and site preparation were 10. So the whole program or the whole project cost just under $100,000. And I was able to access different programs, which covered about 55,000 of it. And I suppose if it is a project that could be built off an existing building, which would reduce the cost quite a bit. I just didn't have an existing building that it could be constructed on. So that is a quick summary, and then I'm happy to field any questions.
That's awesome, Cami. Thank you. So yeah, anyone, you're welcome to unmute yourself, or just type it into the chat. So you talked, just like to confirm a few things. So you said like when it's really cold, you are doing supplemental heat in there just to make sure that that leaf tissue is okay. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it ends up being a handful of nights in the early, in the first few weeks of if I have those plants in there early. I don't know if
And
it's
that's
necessary entirely, but I have done
makes
that a
you
few
sleep better at
times.
night.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that is even within sort of the mini sort of hoop that you have set up in there with the plastic. It's really like just to give it that extra boost.
Yeah, yeah. But
And okay,
generally
so
inside the tent is quite cozy.
yeah, yeah, I imagine it would be. Are you like adding humidity in any way, or do you find that like the water sort of from seeding and watering the plants in there is enough to kind of keep it where you want it to be?
Yeah, I mean, I'm watering the plants, but
Yeah.
that's all. And then there's no tent over the southern bed like the other benches. It's just that I put that there just so I can have some different temperature zones within
Mm,
the greenhouse. And yeah, no, I have no problem with humidity. And actually, even in the summer, because of all the air in there, there is a positive pressure fan at the top, and then I can open the roll up side, and there's like quite a bit of airflow. So um,
awesome.
yeah.
You talked about that you like set up different zones, I guess, based on temperature. Like, how many zones did you end up deciding to have?
I have four zones, and then the last zone will just like they all funnel into the one return valve, which will go through the in-ground bed.
Okay. And would you like if you were to set it up again differently, like, are there any major changes that you would kind of make to the plan that you originally had?
Um, no, I don't think so. I'm pretty happy with it. I would like to get that last step done because I think it'll make the whole system work a bit more efficiently in terms of the heating.
Hmm.
Because it'll make that return water cooler.
Yeah.
But besides that, I'm happy with it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I feel like
I
you've
haven't even,
combined.
yeah, and I mean, in the maintenance, having no maintenance really, I drain it at the end of the season and refill it at the beginning, and it's very simple to manage, and not having the monthly oil bills or anything is also great.
Pretty nice, huh? Yeah. And just to clarify, so when you bought your greenhouse, you bought half of a greenhouse? Is that how you went about it?
I bought parts, which was actually they
Okay.
were Tech wasn't, or Harnwell was not very happy to do that because it is, they consider it a liability if they don't know how their product is going to be installed. But
Hmm.
I did manage to do it. I didn't get any installation directions. That was the only thing. They would give me the parts, but they wouldn't
Okay.
give me any instructions. So, but we managed to figure it all out.
And when did you put that in? Do you remember?
2022 was the
Okay.
first we did it in the winter of 2021, 22. Started it up in 2022.
Okay. So you've had sort of 3 years under your belt at this
Yep,
point. Awesome. One additional question. So what were the funding programs that you uh, accessed? If you remember
sure.
the names of them, that'd be great.
Yep, yeah. The first one was Advancing Innovative Technologies, and the second was the Green Technologies program, and I don't know if that still exists.
No, I think that one was sort of like a time
Okay.
sensitive one.
What is the month it's not in use? I don't use it. I don't use it basically between November and February. And I sometimes leave. I mean, it wouldn't be that big of a deal to leave it on. Clean tech program, that's right. Yeah, the clean tech program. Um, so yeah, I drain it between November and beginning of February, and then hook it back up again.
Any other questions for Cami? All right, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you, yeah, sharing all of that. And I think that costing information and program information is really, really helpful. So it's awesome to hear that you put it in and we're super happy with it so far. So that's great.
Thanks.
Tim Holiday. I own Driftwood Greenhouses, and about 7 years ago we started having a lot of heat issues with our tomato crop. So we've added on a positive air system to help create loft to our natural vents in the roofs. Um, so the shutters will open up obviously, but it just wasn't enough anymore, and it was up until then. This building was put in 2008 and ran fine until, like I said, 7 years ago, when we added the outside air positive pressure system, which is tied into our iGrow stations, which can be put into a computer. Just simple inline fans put outside with a housing, and come inside with receptacles to take bags down either side to evenly distribute that pressure inside the greenhouse to move the heat towards the vents. And then we made use of an existing heat system by turning the heat off, which was hot water. The fan is still used, but we draft air from the outside of the greenhouse to bring more positive air inside the structure. So that's done by portal or a pipe coming out the side. This is more manual in that we have to take the cover off on the outside, which you can see here. On the outside, we just simply remove that, and then we cover this one up on the inside, the intake, and it will bring positive air increased inside. This fall, we are going to take advantage of some of the season extension, and we are putting in a positive air pressure system in both peaks that'll run with a poly tube, probably 12 inches, with air holes cut on the downward facing side to put air down into the structure again to create more loft. And that should, we're thinking, create an environment that's much better for growing tomatoes in this house than it has been in the last 4 or 5 years. Yeah.
And can you tell me a bit about the changes you've experienced
in growing tomatoes over the last few years. So why did we need the positive pressure in the first place?
So we grew tomatoes very well up until about 7 years ago when we started having heat issues because of the environment changing, more or less. We're by 2 bodies of water here on Digby Neck, and we have always had good protection from that, in that we were able to do with our natural vent alone. But in the last few years, we start to see damage at the tops of our tomatoes and complete heat stress. You know, they'll turn purple, they'll do their heat, you know, just crying for some cooler air. You know? So that's what's happening.
And the expansion is really just to increase the amount of air you have flowing through the space.
Exactly.
Okay.
Getting the air. The expansion is getting the air into the system to make the existing vents work better. In a lovely world, this would have automatic shutters, so it would change it from inside to outside, which can be done.
Yep.
I have built everything myself at this point, so this fall we'll be adding a commercial one in that will hopefully eliminate the manual one, all but maybe 1 to 2 weeks of the year. When we get those really hot days, we might still use it, but there's no plans to automate it if this commercial system works that I'm going to be putting in the top of the crop.
Okay.
And the air will be blowing down. So.
Can you talk a little bit about your day-to-day use of the positive pressure, what that looks like?
In this house, we put in one probably about 2 years ago, the positive air on the sides, that are tied right into our iGrow station, which you can simply put into a computer system as well. And so they come on at a certain set temperature point of your choosing. So ours is just what we like for a cucumber, and it'll come on automatically and help us. And then as the heat of the summer comes and we need more, we use our manual system, like I described to you earlier, where it involves us being here to change, but we use it for those 3 to 4 weeks when it's really hot.
And are you running it constantly, day and night, or is it on a...
So the one that's I'll hook up to the system, like I said, takes care of itself. It comes on and off in conjunction with the vent, the natural vent. And then the manual system is, yes, when we put it on, you have to come back at night and turn it back off. And then we use that same system just to move air all night long. So it's just changing the portal of where the air is drafted from, whether it be inside the greenhouse or out. So we're just changing simply in that hot heat to drawing from outside cooler air in.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
So similar to a vent, we have a set temperature of say 26 degrees. That's when we see vents turn on, and that's when we see positive kick.
Yeah, our positive air pressure usually kicks on after the first, so there's a differential.
Okay.
So if your set point is 26, then you'd probably set your positive air at 28 or whatever your desired temperature. So it doesn't come on automatically. We let the positive air system, or the roof vent work naturally itself at first to see if it can take care of the problems. It can't, then the positive air system kicks in as the backup. So it's not always running.
Got some fans running up here too.
Yes, so we increased our horizontal airflow fans, a little bit higher density than recommended for this greenhouse, but it is about air movement again, even getting that air that you bring in mixed and out. So getting that heat, the hot out.
Yeah.
So you don't have. And then our horizontal, we even seen this summer that they were working against us, if you will. Because what it was doing, they were bringing the heat. These are meant more for winter now, we know.
Yeah.
Bringing that warmer air back down to the crop, but we leave them on for airflow and thinking we were doing well. But you could clearly see this year that we were cooking the first 40 feet on either side because we were really bringing that hot heat back down.
Okay.
So it's neat to see a mistake like that. And so now we'll be shutting those off, or we'll be changing where we draft from. So like in the heat of the summer, we won't be drafting from the top. We might do something to change those, but we have to control bringing that hot air to the bottom because it does do more damage. Yeah, well, the whitewash you can see through on the second layer.
Yeah.
Instrumental for us in the last 3 years. In the last 2, we used them and very effective. Had a good crop both years. The second year was better. Like last year was really good. Um, but this year, because of the late spring and really gloomy weather, it seemed like we were on top of it. But by the time we realized that it was still really too hot, it was too late. Because August is really when we got our damage. Everything it might have been struggling, but it still looked good up until then. And then August heat wave hit and wiped us out. And I think they were just struggling the whole time because we didn't take that extra measure. As you can see, this is left over from 2 years ago. So I always worry about cutting down light, but there are products you can use to take it off as well.
Okay, so you're just relying on natural precipitation to take it off.
Right now, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but there are some products out there that you can spray as far as heat reflection and whiteout that you can spray and take back off as well with a cleaner. Yeah.
And so next year, are you going to apply more whitewash?
Yes.
Yes. So we'll have new positive pressure and new whitewash.
New whitewash, and we were just talking this morning about putting. We have in the past used the black white plastic, but for some issues like drainage and whatnot, and lofting with mechanical ventilation, we got away from it, and we just used like a product like I don't think this is Sunbelt, but it's a competitor. But we'll probably put a black white on top of this to reflect the heat as well. So those two things hopefully will get us on a better path for heat management along with the positive air. Yeah.
Can't hear you, Tim. Does anyone have any questions for him? We could try to type it in the chat. I've seen a few people use positive pressure now. I think it's a really sort of simple concept, but I think it can make a really big difference to those intense summer temperatures, especially, considering a place that we would probably associate with being a bit more coastal and have a bit more cloud cover.
So does the positive air pressure also help to deter pests from coming in as well? It seems that you got basically a outflow out of all of your vents and everything. All your openings are going to be outflows, right?
He's nodding and smiling. So yes, I think, when I look up positive pressure and I try to find information on it, that's kind of one of the main selling points for it is actually that it is supposed to make it harder for pests to come in. You also just sort of have like more positive pressure, I guess, happening inside that greenhouse. So yeah, it's harder for them kind of to come in and penetrate that space just because you have sort of that difference in like air density, I think, between the two spaces. I haven't really seen anyone install it primarily for pest management strategy. It's really just kind of been more of this like cooling and air movement, but it's definitely an added bonus if you could do both.
Do we actually see an increase in the pressure inside the structure? I'm just thinking of plant transpiration and gassing. Does it affect the plants in any way and their capacity to off gas and transpire?
So unless I get a Tim video of a nod or a shaking his head, that isn't necessarily something that I've heard any feedback on. What do you think, Tim? This is great. It's like miming.
He could respond in the chat.
Yes, definitely. So there should be a chat box option, I think, on the bottom of your screen. And I just popped something in there, so you should have something yelling at you, but it's okay if we don't figure it out. It's okay. Oh, we got reinforcements happening. All right, so just briefly, I will respond with what I think is happening. I think because we do still have a lot of natural vents, you're not going to get like a crazy difference in pressure sort of between the two spaces. Like he said, he was sort of triggering it to happen after the vents are opening. This technology also works really well if you do have roll-up siding. That particular structure just didn't have it because that's not something they installed back at the time, but you definitely could pair it. So it's not like a significant difference in pressure. All right, so just in the interest of time here, we're going to power ahead to our last presentation, certainly not least, and hopefully more successful than either of our technology fails so far. So take it away, Matthew.
All right, I will try sharing. So,
I'll
um,
let you know when I can see it.
yep, and we'll see if this works here.
Yes, that looks good.
All right, so we'll go with that. So I moved to Nova Scotia in 2020, and we started Coastal Grove Farm in Southwestern Shore, and we have been working at putting in geothermal greenhouses. I redesigned just a regular high tunnel, 26-foot wide, premium round greenhouse to high tunnel. I mean to put into a greenhouse, and like Cami, I took out the north wall and made that solid. And I'll talk a little bit more when we get there. But using the geothermal systems is basically just capturing the temperature that the Earth has for us. I'm going to talk a lot in Fahrenheit. I apologize for that. And so we're looking at trying to capture the roughly 52-degree Fahrenheit temperature that the Earth kind of keeps at about 8 to 12 feet down. And we're going to run air down into the ground. Here you can see the installation of the geothermal units. Um, there's the big pipe is the manifold, and off of that, I redesigned how a typical geothermal greenhouse um, unit is installed and put together. This is atypical. Normally, there's an intake manifold, the big one that you see laying down with an upright. Um, and there would then be the 4-inch pipe going to another manifold, but would only be the exit of the air. So I have taken off the second manifold because I wanted to increase the natural airflow inside the greenhouse when the geothermals are running, and hopefully be able to cut down on the horizontal airflow fans in the greenhouse. So we go in and basically, like Cami was thinking about thermal mass, the earth becomes that for us, and the crushed stone and the sand on top of the 4-inch piping becomes that thermal mass. We're now 6 years in. Our original greenhouse, which you can kind of see up on the hillside, was put in over the winter of 20 to 2021. And that internal temperature now is consistently running a few degrees warmer than the first year that it was put in. So we're actually seeing a little bit of a heat increase, which is great for the winter, not so nice for the summertime when we're using it for cooling. So we continue to build the ground back up after excavating it out, and eventually fill it in. You can see the intake manifolds. You guys can see my little cursor arrow, right? Um, Okay, you can see the intake manifolds are here. They're up about 6 to 7 feet. And then we have an inline fan that sits down in them, and that's pushing the air down. And you can see the piping, 4-inch pipe coming up along the outside wall. And I have that both on the north wall, which you're looking at, and also on the glazing south wall. So about every 3 feet. So every intake, it's an 18-inch intake, and I have 24 4-inch outlets coming off of each manifold. So it gives me a nice distribution of air when the geothermal units are running. And here you can see the north wall more finished. We do have it, as Cami was saying, it's fully insulated. We just lose heat out of it during the wintertime, and we don't need it for any light gain during the summertime. So fully insulating it. And then this is at a 10-degree angle. The wall is not straight up and down, and it has a reflective barrier. So I used rock wool to insulate, and then put on a reflective barrier, and that reflective barrier gives me, with the 10-degree angle, gives me actual growth, active growth in this greenhouse with no supplemental lighting for 11 months out of the year. So I'm capitalizing on the shoulder seasons. Um, so the intake manifold's there. And then we have all of the outflow pipes. You can see them here along this wall here. Um, what I would like to still do is we run a shade cloth over this. This is rigid polycarbonate, so I don't have to think about it. Like Cami was saying, I wanted to be able to sleep at night and not have to think about the plastic getting ripped off. So we went with the polycarbonate. The greenhouses are roughly 20 1 feet wide by 120 feet long. So we're around 2,500 square feet. And we have three geothermal units in the newest greenhouse. All of the geothermal engineers tell us we need geothermal unit every 30 feet. We've been trying to limit that down, which does cause some issues. But our final product is not produce. Our final product is a perennial tea that will be in here and it can withstand the cooler temperatures. So we're just looking at moderating the temperature. We don't burn any fossil fuels to add any additional heating. Like even on a completely sunny, cloudy day in January or February with temperatures being in the negatives outside, we'll get to a positive 15 or 18 inside with no actual sunlight hitting it, just the ambient light. So I guess that was it. Um, so in the sense of what does it cost, we've got about 2,500 square feet in each greenhouse. We've got two of them right now. So it's about 5,000 square feet. We're only running electricity and blowing air in the ground, and that is costing us between $5,500 a year and 6,000 for operating costs for that 5,000 square feet throughout the entire year. Um, we set the temperature thermostats on these differently between the seasons to try to maximize that efficiency. And we do have horizontal air fans in the greenhouses as well, to help moderate that. So one thing that I want to do this year, try to increase the cooling capacity of the greenhouses is actually to run a crop up the outside of the greenhouse over the glazing to give us another degree of shade cloth, but actually have it a living vine. So we'll be playing with that to see how that works. I've got planting space right outside the edge of the greenhouse to be able to do that. So kind of just playing outside the realm of what you're supposed to do. And that's it. I'm happy to ask, yeah, any questions. That was pretty quick in a nutshell. Um, the one issue that we do have with the greenhouses, because we're permanent soil systems, is that the humidity level in the greenhouses. I'm still working on them, and I got to do more work on that. We do get high humidity in here quite frequently. Um, our wood chip walkways are put in and then inoculated with an edible mushroom that eventually fruits a couple times a year. But more importantly, I'm getting the breakdown of those wood chips, which natural process off gases, carbon dioxide, to try to um, add some non-fossil fuel carbon dioxide into the greenhouse.
It's awesome. Thank you, Matthew. Um, what is the reflective material that you've got on that north wall?
That is your typical house construction. It's a bubble, so it's two aluminum foils with a bubble insulation in between, so it adds a little bit more insulation value. Um, and any hardware store will carry it. Building center will carry it.
Cool. And you said so your main crop in there is tea and the hort crops, the tomatoes that we've seen in there. That's, it's a bonus. Is that
It's a
is that
bonus.
right?
Yeah, for the first couple of years, you can see the tea is actually planted underneath the tomatoes, in between the tomatoes. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, and the nice thing is, like I said, we don't have any additional grow lights. We're contemplating doing that to extend our cucumber season on one bed, and then be able to move it. We'll eventually have a third greenhouse here. But what we're finding is that the we tend to transition this all into lettuce or greens for the winter time. So once our cucumbers come out mid-October, we have everything getting planted into lettuce or spinach, to get us through the winter, and we actually harvest throughout and have active regrowth all but those 3 weeks of January.
Those are tough, aren't they? They're deep, they're dark, and they're cold.
Yeah.
So what sort of temperature are you sort of, I guess, aiming for in the winter or trying to maintain?
Yeah, so we got the geothermals to kick in at basically between a +6 and a +8
Okay.
inside. So that's going to maintain that +8 to +10.
Hmm.
is where we're holding it at for the most part. I mean, even when we had the polar vortex at a what was that a minus, we had a minus 21. I think we got down to a plus 3, plus 4 inside the greenhouses. And at that point, we didn't have any produce for the most part, right? So with the tea, it can get down to a freezing temperature, but we also have citrus in the greenhouse. So we try to make sure that it just doesn't get, if we can keep it at that plus 5 or greater, everybody does happier.
No, that's awesome. That's a really nice time. Like that's a really nice temperature to be able to hold it at for kind of
Yeah, well, I would
those
love
winter
to
months.
experiment with the positive pressure and instead of
Hmm.
just pulling the ambient air temperature, what I find the greenhouses right now for us, we do have exhaust vents as well located in the middle of the greenhouse. Um,
Hmm.
that helps to pull, and the intake louvers are all the way on the end walls. But I like the idea of looking at a positive pressure thing where I'm actually incorporating a geothermal pipe for the inlet so that it's pulling the
Hmm.
air from maybe 100 feet away from the greenhouse underground
Yep.
so it can actually cool. When we have our summer air temperature, we're at, I got to go Fahrenheit here, 82, 85, maybe even 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So pulling that in doesn't really cool us much, but if we can get it underground and let the ground take some of that heat out of that outside air before it enters the greenhouse, I think we'd have a huge gain there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We've got just a couple questions in here. So is it a low of 4 to 5 nighttime temperatures?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. And then where is the steel greenhouse structure from?
I work with Walpen Enterprises. So once again, as Cam said, Harnos doesn't like to give parts. Um,
Yep.
and I now have Walpen Enterprises. They can bend straight metal to give me the greenhouse shape that I'm looking for. Therefore, the winds kind of blow right over it. And once again, I was taking the climate changes and our coastal location to in the design process for this greenhouse.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, you guys are certainly not in sheltered areas at all. So you definitely have to take that into account in the design phase.
Yeah. But
And then oh, go ahead, Matthew.
but no, I'm just going to reiterate that I've seen our original greenhouse that's now it was put up in 2021. It was its first operating season. We're seeing that probably running um, almost 2 degrees warmer than this new one
Hmm,
already. So we have seen a creep up in just ambient air temperature throughout the year.
interesting. And then one final question. So how many years do you expect it will take to recoup that investment?
So these greenhouses, because we just put this new one in, I know they cost right around that 99,000.
Hmm.
Okay, so they're producing 15 to $20,000 of produce a year. So I actually get most of my payback before we even start harvesting tea.
That's awesome.
And the tea is viable for 40 years. So once
Did you
we
say
have
40? 40?
40, yeah. So
Okay.
once we're up in operation, the tea will push the vegetables out of
Yep.
space, and we move all to tea, and then tea will carry the operation forward.
Yeah, it's a nice mix where we have to wait for that perennial crop to establish and kind of just maximize what we can until that really gets grooving.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's and the polycarbonate, right? We got 15 years before we have to even contemplate having to replace that, and we never have to worry about is the plastic getting old enough before it blows off some winter windstorm. So
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely have a longer kind of lifespan
yeah.
in with that. All right. So I think I kicked you off here, which is great. It's exactly what I wanted to do. I want to say thank you guys so much for sharing and participating. Yeah, sessions like this really can't happen without you guys. So I really appreciate the time and energy that it takes to pop on here and to be so open and share kind of the stuff you're trying out. And yeah, really sort of help other people make decisions on their greenhouses and future installations. So thank you very much. I do very much appreciate it. Like I said, our next meeting will be December 15th. Stay tuned on what that topic will be. I think we'll probably be leaning a little bit more strawberries in Quebec as well as raspberry blackberry. But as a participant of the tour, I will say it was fantastic and just really a cool listen along. So I hope to see you guys there. Have a nice day.